Greetings, everyone. I hope you're having a good day. Just opening up my inkwell and grabbing my fountain pen that I'm dipping. So, no real plan. I'm just going to see what kind of falls out of my head here. So, let's try a little zoom in. Maybe that'll be too much. Let's go back one. See if it'll focus just enough. So yeah, just doodling. I'm trying to think of something that might exist or maybe not exist in the animal world, maybe. Or maybe in the garden. If there's a creature that might be mistaken for something, or maybe wants to be mistaken for something, I don't know. We'll just see how this goes. So, I don't know how often people go outside to just wander around and look at nature. Depending on where you are, you don't really get that experience the same way. There might be a ravine nearby that you could kind of make your way to, I suppose. But for the most part, I think it's important to find things in the natural world. And sometimes when you're wandering around, you might notice. Let's see if that'll focus a little bit better. Oh, well, maybe that's the best that we got. But sometimes you kind of, you notice something when you're out and about. And you might see a little hint of something out there. And you kind of shrug it off. You think, oh, well, it's just a trick in your eyes. And that's a possibility, I suppose. It makes you wonder, though, about where these stories might come from. The stories of the wee folk, for example. But I like to think about that kind of stuff once in a while. You think there has to be an origin. Now, I do think that human beings are rather purposeful. Of all the creatures, we're very different, I think, as far as how our brains work, how we might occupy time. You know, I don't know if animals or other creatures, let's say, do what I'm doing right now. I think there's a lot of like survival mode type things that they might do. That seems slightly more important to them than grabbing a sketchbook and doing something like this. Now, let us see. I'm at this point where I'm trying to figure out if I want to have longish hair, short hair, maybe something as a hat. Hmm. Let's dip this pen. It's coming up with like a practical kind of creature. Makes you think about things a little bit differently. How would that creature exist in the world? How would they utilize the things around them? How would they move? You know, they wouldn't have a manufacturing facility. But would they weave things? Would they have little daydreams, let's say? It's an interesting idea. Something that's always been a fascination, I suppose, of mine is the concept that there's a tiny world as well as, well, an unseen kind of world. And sometimes you're meant to kind of get a glimpse of it. So when I was a kid, there was a book series, and I think eventually a cartoon. I think it was called The Littles. And they would have wonderful adventures, and they would build things, and but in a lot of ways they looked like mice. And I do remember thinking, I wonder if there's, you know, creatures out there that are a little bit like that. And it's kind of because of those little adventures that there are certain types of, let's say, like traps that I kind of despise. So I'm not a big fan of like sticky traps, for example, for pest control, because it seems rather cruel. I think sometimes we are bothered too much by the thought of certain creatures. So, like a spider or well, a mouse. And sometimes we don't see that some of them might have a benefit, although I don't know if mice always have a benefit, honestly enough. But some rodents, I'm sure that they do. You know, they clean up little messes, but sometimes they make big messes too. So yes, I'm not a fan of sticky traps. Now let's see. Could we incorporate something from the small world that we'd know would be a small world thing? How about something like this? So making little marks. And what that's supposed to represent are kind of the inner workings of a flower. A flower that I think sometimes people look at as kind of a nuisance. One that inspires, I suppose, people not to cut their lawns in the month of May in hopes of taking care of the bumblebees. And not really the best thing to hide behind if you were a small creature. But all the same, just something fun. I admit, I do find dandelions kind of hopeful, and they're kind of a nuisance too, I suppose, but they're not really doing anything other than just happy to grow. And this whole thing about lawn care is a wondrous thing. So I think it's a concept of making sure that things are kind of orderly. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. doodling away. It's funny, I really didn't have this in mind when I was drawing. I'm just kind of rambling on. There's always kind of like a little bud waiting for their time on a dandelion, it seems. They're usually set up a little bit lower. It's almost like they're waiting for their chance after this one gets as much sun as they can. Another waits their turn. And each flower does their best to feed the rest of the root system. So with this drawing, I think I'm treating this as an exercise of sorts as well. See where something could go. Now, for a small creature, should they have their own t-shirt? That would be interesting, I suppose. I'll figure that out in a moment or two as well. But in the meantime, let's continue on with this plant. Right here, let's have another spot where a little buddy might grow. As well. Now, how would you hold your pants on, I suppose? Would you use kind of rope? Maybe. We'll hint towards something like that. There would have to be some kind of loop too, let's say. Let's have it so that it's tied off over here. Actually, let's see if we can zoom this out rather than in. Let's try there. And if we have to, we can get back in to look at details again. Now I've created a little conundrum of sorts here. Do we want to have it so that this creature is kind of climbing it? We're at a strange sort of spot. I didn't sidestep it at all, really. I'm giving the our friend here kind of like a bootcut jean look, almost like bell bottoms. And right here, we're going to have one toe here like that. I don't know if there'd be much benefit to having toenails when you're so tiny, but I guess maybe so. The other toe is going to be here, another toe there, another toe there, since we're going with feet like that. We're not bothering with shoes. I think your center of gravity would be different at this size. Now, what would we do with this side here? Let us figure out something else. We're going to have it so that there, yes. And have it so their foot is on top of something. We'll go back into for more detail's sake there, I think. So I don't really watch the camera. I should. I don't really, though. Have the toes kind of like that. This is just like a little stone. I'll put a crease in the pants just a little bit. Hopefully that'll be enough of an indication that although I may have put the knee in a little too aggressive. That's all right. So just a doodle and nothing too serious. Okay, let's see here. What am I going to do with this shirt? Let's say we make a fun shirt. Now, by the way, this is not a sponsored thing. I just think the logo looks cool. Although I've changed it a little bit, just because, you know, I don't really have much room. Kind of looks like a race car. Right now I'm just kind of looking at the outlining just a little bit. Get rid of some of the scratchy look of things. We'll definitely try to finish it up. So let me know in the comments if you like to draw along on your own projects while you're having this video play and listen to me ramble on about nonsense, which is fine. And if there are certain sort of like ideas that you have that you think, oh, it would be kind of fun to doodle along with that kind of a thing, that's fine as well. I think that's funny enough. I don't think I need to go really any further than that, just for sake of the doodle. And you know, staying under 35 minutes is all right with me as well. I could probably add lots and lots of little weird details in here. All right, let's see if there's any last little things to finish up. No, I think we're probably good. As I said, I might have been a little aggressive with how I did that knee there. That is okay. Okay, now let's see if we can get an overall kind of look at this. Go to that level. Well, that seems kind of funny. Yeah, I think that's good for now. It doesn't have to be too serious, I don't think. So, well, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thanks for hanging out for a few minutes anyway, and well, hopefully we'll see you at some point in the near future. All right, ciao for now.